How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Peites, Daf 89 of Masechta Menachos. Friends, I have a feeling today's going to be a long daf. Just because there's 5 sections to it, and generally the pattern goes, when there's a lot of sections, it ends up being a long daf. Even if it feels like it's not necessarily that difficult, there's a lot of parts to it, they just tend to add up. So anyways, that's my prediction over here. The first section of today's daf is the korbin Todah's oil. We've discussed this in the past, but here I guess is really the mucker for it. How do we know that? We're going to also say machlekes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi ben Azariah. How much oil is there in specifically for the for the lachmei Todah? We then discuss how much oil accompanies a minchas nedavah. This is also a machlokes that we saw in the Mishnah that we will be fleshing out, whether it is 1 log of oil, regardless of how many isaruns of flour there is, or is it 1 log of oil per isarun. We will dive deeper into that. Section number 3, the amount of oil for lighting the menorah. As we already know, it is a half a log per lamp. We will discuss a little bit of how we arrived at that amount and an interesting Yerushalmi quoted by Tosfos. Section number 4 of 5, mixing together korbanis on the mizbeach. Now that is a fun topic. If the nisachim of different korbanis get mixed together, what do you do? And finally, when a korbin is offered shelo lishma, of course, we already know, we're almost at the end of Masechta Menachos here. We already know from the very, very beginning of Masechta Zvachim that a korbin that is slaughtered shelo lishma is kosher, as long as it's not a chatas or a korbin pesach. Ela shelo alu levayil m'shem chova. There's a very interesting question, a question that I've always kind of wondered about and thought about and never quite landed on. And that question is, so then what? So then what happens? Meaning, let's say you have to bring a korban chatas, and you say, you know what? I'm going to the Beis Hamikdash, let me also bring a korban shlamim. And as unrelated, let me take a sip of water. Okay, so he says, I'm going to the Beis Hamikdash to bring a korban chatas, let me also bring a korban shlamim. Azoi. Now he slaughters the korban shlamim, and right when the korban shlamim is slaughtered, it's slaughtered with the intention of the chatas. So it's shelo lishma. Okay, so we say fine. So it's still count. You can still offer it, but it's not going to count. You said you're going to bring a korban shlamim. You still have to bring a korban shlamim. But now what? Do you offer it as a chatas, or do you slaughter the shlamim as a chatas? We say okay, it's still kosher, but now what's the next step? Do you do the zrikas adam like a shlamim or like a chatas now? Do you do tnufa? Do you do nisachim? Minchas nisachim, misuchayayin. For a shlamim, yes. For a chatas, no. So then what happens? So we're going to discuss that. Pashtus is you still move ahead. So that's what we're saying. When a korban is offered shelo lishma, so we're going to say you still move ahead like the original korbin, but we are going to get into some of those details. Interesting discussion there. So friends, this daf, it's not like a crazy daf, but it does really cover quite a bit of important topics. So friends, without further ado, let's jump in and really enjoy ourselves on daf Peites of Masechta Menachos. Friends, we begin on daf Peites of Masechta Menachos, first line of daf Peites Amid Aleph of Masechta Menachos. Chatzi log shemen lesoda. We said in our Mishnah that a korbin Todah has half a log of oil for all of the lachmei Todah, for all of the breads, as we've discussed in the past. Says the Gemara, Tani, we learn a brayso of Akiva says of Akiva matam lomar bashemen cheve. If we let's take, I'm going to read you now the pasuk by a korbin Todah that discusses the 3 matzah loaves. Now there's no oil with the chametz loaves. Obviously, we know 10 of the loaves of the Todah are wait, I'm just kidding. Okay. 10 of the loaves of a Todah are chametz. There's no oil with those. There are 30 matzah loaves, of course, there's oil with them. So now it says in the pasuk by the 30 matzah loaves, it says, Imal Todah akrivenu v'ikriv al zevach atodah chalos matzos blulos ba'shemen, number 1. Ukike matzos meshuchim ba maybe shaman, that's number 2. V'solos morbeches chalos blulos ba'shamen, number 3. It says ba'shemen 3 times. We're going to start off by focusing on the first 2. So now, Tanya, starting over, we learn in Abraisa, Rabbi Akiva Omer says, Rabbi Akiva, Mata b'lomar b'shemen shnei paimim. How come it says b'shemen twice? Again, it says it 3 times. We're focusing on the first 2 right now. How come it says b'shemen twice? How come it says chalos matzos blulos b'shemen v'rikike matzos meshuchim b'shamen? Favos. Ilu lo nemer ela b'shemen echod. If it only said b'shemen once, I would say, Hareyu kichol hamenochis. I'll say, all right. So the korbin Todah is like every other korbin mincha, lilog, that it requires a log of oil. But now that it says b'shemen twice, have a ribuy achar ribuy. It is a inclusion after an inclusion. Is it really? The Gemara is going to ask, no, it isn't. But ve'ein riboy achar riboy el lemayit. And when you have an inclusion following an inclusion, it excludes. Let's go weiter for 1 second. Mi ato akosov lechatzi log, to say that we're not talking about a full log, we're talking about a half a log. Okay, let's talk about a few things. What is a riboy achar riboy? Riboy achar riboy is when you have an extra word, and we say, what's that word doing there? It's extra. All right, if it's extra, we're going to learn something from it. And then we say, wait a second, what's that extra word? We have another extra word. We're going to learn another thing out. We say, wait, we have 2 extra words. So when you have 1 extra word and another extra word, one thing that's coming to include something, and then another thing that's coming to include another thing, we say, wait, this is actually coming to exclude something. Riboy achar riboy, an inclusion followed by another inclusion actually comes to exclude. Now, the thing is, we actually said that the first b'shemen is not a riboy, it's not extra. We said it serves a purpose. That if we would only have 1 b'shemen, we would say that, okay, we're saying that the korbin Todah requires oil like every other korbin mincha, a log of oil. And then we say, now it says b'shemen again. So that should really be the first riboy. That's the first time we're saying, it's extra, right? So it doesn't really make sense what we've said so far, and the Gemara is about to be on that and say it doesn't make sense. But regardless of that, if we would, so we're going to make it make sense. Okay, don't worry about that. We're going to make it make sense. So that being the case, that we're going to make it make sense and show how it is in fact a riboy achar riboy. So let's just take that one step further and say, and therefore, whenever you have a riboy achar riboy, an inclusion after another or followed by another inclusion, it's actually coming to exclude. To say that by a korbin Todah, the lachmi Todah, it is not a regular mincha. It is not a log of oil. What is it? A half a log of oil. Okay, we're going to read that again inside, and this time we'll be able to move further along. I'm going to drink some water. Starting from the beginning. Tani, we're learning Abraisa. Rabbi Akiva Omer says, Rabbi Akiva, Matam b'lomar b'shemen shnei paimim. Favos, why does it say b'shemen twice? If it only said b'shemen once, I would say, Hareyu kichol amenochis. The log, okay, so it's like every other korbin mincha that requires oil. A log of oil. Achshav, shekosov b'shemen, and now that it says b'shemen twice, have a riboy achar riboy, it's an inclusion that follows another inclusion. When you have an inclusion followed by another inclusion, it's coming to exclude. Miato akosov lechatzi log. That is to say that the pasuk is coming to exclude, to be exclusionary by the korban Todah to say that the lachmi Todah don't have a full log, but rather half a log. Riboy achar riboy, what do you mean riboy achar riboy, right? This is the question. Chad riboyu, it's only one riboy, right? We said that the first shemen is to say that the korban Todah is like every other korbin mincha that requires a log of oil. The extra one is only this, is only the second bashemen. That's when things become extra. The first one was necessary. Ella, rather, actually the first one was also not necessary. Ella, rather, here's what Rabbi Akiva is saying. Either lo nemar bashemen kol ikr. If it didn't say bashemen at all, I would say, oh, okay, well, korban Todah is a mincha. The lachmei Todah are a mincha. And we know about all sorts of other minchas. So I would say, the lachmei Todah should be like every other mincha, lilog. And I would just say, even without saying bashemen at all, I would say lachmei Todah are loaves of flour. And just like every loaf of flour, it should require, every flour offering, it should require, should require a log of oil. This is without saying any bashemen. Bashemen, and now not only does it say bashemen once, it says bashemen twice, completely unnecessary. Bashemen the first time is unnecessary, bashemen the second time is unnecessary. Save riboy, achar riboy, it is an inclusion that follows an inclusion. Ben riboy achar riboy el lemait, and it is therefore coming to exclude miato akasuv lachatzi log. To say that unlike regular menachos, the lachmei Todah are not offered with a full log of oil, but rather a half log of oil. Yochol yehei chatzi log zeh mischalik lishloshes minin l'chalus v'kikim l'revicha. Now, as I'm sure many of us here at Babble on Talmud can recall, do we now take this half log and simply divide it in three? So, right, a half divided in three would be a sixth, right? Right? Why not? Right? If you have a half and you divide it in three, so then that means that there would be six, right? If take a half and divide it in three, so then there are 3 parts in the half, which means that the other half is another 3 parts, so that's 6 parts in the whole. So that means that each one would be 1/6, right? Great. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go back to being not confused. Now, we have this half a log, right? We have a half, sorry if I confused anybody. Basically, the point was that a half divided in 3 is a sixth. Great. Now that we've established that, let's move on. So now, half a log of oil, right? We've established that. There's a half a log of oil for the lachmei Todah. Now, as we know, there are 3 types of matzah lachmei Todahs. So the most obvious thing to do would be take this half log, divide it in 3, and say that each type of loaf for the korbin Todah, for the lachmei Todah, the chalas, the rekikin, the revuchin, each one would get a sixth of a log of oil, an equal amount. But, excuse me, as I was saying, that many of us at Babble on Talmud probably recall that it's actually not like that. You take the half log and divide that in half, so a half divided in half is a quarter, and a quarter of the log is shared by the chalas and the rekikin, and the other quarter of a log goes entirely to the revuchin. So the revuchin actually gets twice as much as the chala, as the rekikin, or right, gets just the revuchin get the same amount as both the chalas and rekikin together. Okay, sorry, it's a little technical. I hope that wasn't confusing. Anyways, so Yochel Yehei, I'm reading that again. Yochel Yehei, Chatzi log, this half a log, Zeh mischalik l'shloshes minin. Is it possible that we just take this half a log and divide it equally, l'chalos, v'lerekikin, v'lerevucha, v'lerevicha, to say that each of the 3 types of matzah loaves of the korban Todah, each one gets an equal amount of oil, a sixth of a log of oil? Kishu Omer, when it says Bashemin b'revicha shein Talmud Omer, but it says Bashemin, remember in the pasuk, a third time by the revuchin. It doesn't need to say Shemin by the revuchin because, as Rashi points out, Rashi on the top of the daf points out, that we already know about revuchin from the minchas chavitin, and there it says oil. So therefore, we don't need it to say oil by the revicha over here by the Todah. So why does it say it? Riba shemen l'revicha. It is coming to be marbe shemen specifically for the revuchin. Haketzad, how so? Maybe chatzi log shemen. So you take a half a log of oil for the 3 matzah loaves of the Todah, and now v'chotzeyu, you divide that in half. A half divided in half is 2 quarters. Chetzio lechalos v'lerekikin, 1 quarter is shared by the chalas and the rekikin. V'chetzio, in the other quarter, goes entirely l'revicha. Okay, where have we landed with Rabbi Akiva? Got a little bit technical, not too crazy, but we should be able to just put it in a nutshell right now. I think it should be okay. Where we landed with Rabbi Akiva is that when it comes to the lachmei Todah, so the chametz breads don't require any oil. The 3 types of matzah loaves, there is a half a log of oil for them. Half of it goes to the chalas and rekikin, and the other half of it, the other half of the half a log, goes to the revuchin. Azoy. Now, Omar loy, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says to Rabbi Akiva, Akiva, im ata marbe kol hayom kulo ba'shemen, eni shomei lecha. Says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that's a beautiful ba'shemen, ribuy achar ribuy, lema'e, all sorts of beautiful skills there with your ribuys and miuts and all sorts of stuff. However, elachatzi log shemen letoda v'rvius shemen lenazir v'achad also yom shebenida lenida halacha lemoshe misinai. However, says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, we'll get back to the other 2 items in a second, but says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that the fact that by the lachmei Todah there is a half a log of oil, that is halacha lemoshe misinai. It's not from ribuy achar ribuy lemayit. Says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the fact that there's a half a log of oil for the lachmei Todah, that is halacha lemoshe misinai. It's not learned out from bashemen, ribuy achar ribuy lemayit. Says Rashi, there's an afkamina between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. While both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah agree that there is a half a log of oil when it comes to the lachmei Todah, they do disagree, however, because since Rabbi Akiva was learning out from the riboys, so Rabbi Akiva said that there was a 3rd riboy, the bashemen by the revuchin, and Rabbi Akiva learned out from that riboy that the revuchin gets its own quarter of a log, and the chalas and rekikin share the other quarter of a log. However, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah doesn't have that limud because he's not learning out from the riboys. He's just learning out. He's saying, look, there's a log Moshe Misinai. It says half a log of oil for the lachmei Todah. Therefore, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the half a log would be divided equally by the chalas, rekikin, and revuchin, a 1/6 of a log each. Givaldik. Now, just to explain the other things there on the list, drinking a little more water. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah had said that there are 3 things. He had listed 3 things that are lachal Moshe Misinai. One is half a log of oil for the lachmei Todah. The other one was a quarter of a log of oil for the nazir, right? As we know, right? Just like by the Todah. Well, okay, no, forget about that. Quarter of a log of oil for the lachmei nazir. That there, the nazir that he brings with his ale nazir, there are chalas and rekikin. There are chalas and rekikin, and the chalas and rekikin have a quarter of a log of oil. And the fact that there are 11 days benida the lenida is also lachal Moshe Misinai. What does that mean? Al regel achas, without getting into the very technical and complicated details that is much of Masechta Nida. That's if a woman sees dam, so then let's say she hasn't seen any dam in let's say 30 days, and now she sees dam. So then she automatically becomes a nida for 7 days. For the next 7 days she is a nida. After that she goes to the mikvah, and she is tahora. That's regardless of if she had only seen dam on day 1 or if she saw dam every single day for those 7 days. I'm talking about mida oraisa. Mida rabbanan, whenever a woman sees dam, she waits 7 days. But mida oraisa, a woman sees dam for the right when a woman sees dam and she hasn't seen dam, let's just say for 30 days, even though we're actually talking about it's actually 11 days, but whatever. I mean, the point is, if clearly this is a new cycle and she sees dam, so then she becomes a nida, and she's a nida for 7 days, regardless of if she sees dam again during those 7 days. Now, after those 7 days, she goes to the mikveh and she's tahora. For the next 11 days, there's this kind of buffer kind of period where if she sees any dam during the next 11 days, she does not become a nida. What she becomes is complicated. Shemeres yom kineged yom, possibly a zava, it gets complicated. But suffice it to say, for the next 11 days, she's not a nida. If she sees dam, she does not become a nida. Okay. And then after those 11 days, right, so if there were 7 days of nida and 11 days, right, that are in between nidas, so 7 and 11 is 18. Starting on day 19, if she sees dam again, she will become a nida again. This is all mida oraisa for the next 7 days, and that's whether she sees dam on day 19, 20, 25, 30, whatever it is, the next time she sees dam after this 18-day cycle, she'll become a nida again. Those 11 days, the chadas hayom ben nida lenida, that is halacha lemoshe misinai. There is noise going on in the background. Give me 1 second what is this? What? Oh, the power washers. Oh, I'm getting hit from all sides here. I think I'm just going to get hit from all sides. I think there's usually the road work going on. I don't know that there's the road work going on right now. I think my neighbor might be doing laundry. So I think I keep on hearing the laundry going, but I'm like, that's a lot of laundry spinning cycles. But now I think I'm getting hit from the power washers. It's not very quiet here in where I live. All right, let's go weiter. Okay, now we move on to the next section of the daf. How much oil accompanies a minchas nedavah? Okay, this is a machlekes was on the Mishnah. We're going to get into the details over here. Belog aya moded. The Mishnah had said that there is 1 log per Yisar. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said 1 log total. Tana Rabbona, the rabbis taught, b'mitzora oni. Okay, ksiv. Okay, Yisar and balul valog. Do. Okay. Who wants to explain what's going on here? All right. There is something very, very peculiar when it comes to a mitzora. A mitzora, of course, has come up kind of throughout Kadshim for different reasons. We keep on going back to the purification process of mitzora. It's very intricate. What we're going to focus on now, the part of the process that we're going to focus on now, are the different korbanis. So the mitzora as part, kind of at the end, is like kind of it's a very elaborate purification process that is spread out over several weeks. At the very end of it, he brings korbanis. Right? By Yom HaShmini, it's going to be next week's parsha. He brings one of next week's parshas. He brings 3 korbanis. Who can tell me which korbanis? Chatas and Ola, and an Asham. Now, an Ola usually has nisachim. In Ola, usually there's minchas nisachim, nisachayayin. Now, a chatas and an Asham don't usually have nisachim. A chatas and Asham do not usually have nisachim, but by the purification of mitzora, they do. That together with the 3 korbanos, there are 3 isarons of oil. What does this pasuk say? V'imdalu. Okay, fine. Okay, but so that's a different thing. Okay, no, well, we're gonna get. Oh, what's this? Vayom hashmini on day 8, yikach shnei kvasim tmimim v'chavsa achas. 2 kevises and 1 kivsa. The kivsa, of course, is going to be for the chatas because it's female. The 2 kevises are going to be for the ashram and for the ola. Of course, the ashram mitzora as well as the ashram nazir are not a ram in their second year. Rather, they are in the first year. Ushlosha esronim soles mincha blula bashemen v'log echad shaman. That, but this is by the usher, the one who can afford it. So there's going to be 3 isarons of flour mixed with oil. Now, okay, so there's a chiddush when it comes to the korbanis of a mitzorah as part of his purification. He brings a chatas, an ola, and a shlamim. Normally, only the ola would have nisachim. However, by the purification of mitzorah, also the chatas and the asham have nisachim as well. So with the 3 korbanis, there are 3 isarons of flour, and that is 1 isaron per korbin. Great. Now, our Gemara is taking the pasuk by an ani, by a mitzorah ani. Oh, okay, so let's talk about this now. So a mitzorah is another example of a korbin ole v'yored kazeh, meaning that based on what you can afford, there are different options. It's not like by the korbin ole v'yored by Tumas Mikdash v'Kadasha, like we learned about in Masechta Shavuos. Over there's 3 tiers. There's animals, birds, and flour. Here there's just 2 tiers. When it comes to a mitzorah who is an ani, if he can't afford it, so there is another option. In that option, he still needs to bring the korbin asham, a regular korbin asham, just like an usher has to bring. However, the chatas and the ola could be birds. It could be turtle doves, young doves. You could bring a nest of birds. A nest, of course, is 2 birds. One will be a chatas, one will be an ola. He has that option. So we are discussing now a mitzorah who cannot afford it, a mitzorah who is an ani, and the pasuk by mitzorah who is an ani, it says, and we're going to make a drasha from this pasuk. It says by the mitzorah who is an ani, isaron balul valog. If we look at the pasuk, it says, "V'imdalu." I'm reading the pasuk. If he cannot afford it, "Ben yodam haseges v'lokach keves echad asham." So he still needs to bring the keves as an asham. The asham is going to be the same whether you can afford it, whether you're wealthy or poor. Lisnufa l'chaper olav. Now v'isaron solas, and 1 isaron of solas. This is where the drush is coming in. So v'isaron solas, you're also bringing 1 isaron of solas instead of, right, the usher brings 3 animals and 3 isarons. He's bringing 1 animal and 1 isaron. Echad, 1. Balul bashemen, mixed with oil. Lemincha. V'log shaman, and an additional log of oil. That log is going to be for his bahonis. Now we learn out, so now, getting into our Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Mitzorah ani ksiv, it says by Mitzorah ani, Isaron balul v'log, it talks about that together with the asham that the ani needs to bring, that's an animal, that's a keves, he also needs 1 isaron that is mixed with oil and an additional log. But the drasha from there is, Lime, that it teaches us, al isaron sheta'un log, Divrei Chachamim, but the Chachamim learn from there, they make a drasha, and they learn that every isaron that is offered with a minchas nedavah needs to be accompanied by a log of oil. You bring 60 isarons of flour, 60 logs of oil. Divrei Chachamim, azoi zogt the Chacham. That's what the Chachamim said. Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Omrim, whereas Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov disagree, and they say, Afilu mincha shel shishim esonim. No, even a gigantic mincha of 60 isarons. How much is 60 isarons? Each, I believe, oh boy, oh no, I don't want to do it. Wait, oh boy, I don't really want to do the math. No, I'm going to do the math. It's 6 eggs in a log, 4 logs in a kav. So it's 24 eggs in a kav. It's 6 kavs in a sa'ah. So 24 times 6 is 144. 3 saw in a kav, 3 saw in an ephah. So that is 430, yeah, as we know, 432 eggs in an ephah. And an isaron is divided by 10. So that is 43.2 eggs in an isaron. And then, so if you do that times 10, it's back to 432 times 6. Oh boy. I hope I did the math right. It's a lot of eggs. It's big. I hope I did the math right there. I may not have. But I may not have done the math right. Okay, forget about it. It's a big mincha. Okay? And even though you're bringing a big mincha, I may or may not have done the math right. But the point is, 60 isarons is a lot of flour, and yet, afilu mincha shel shishim esronim ein la ella loga, there's only going to be one log of oil. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, and they also learn out from the mitzora ani la mincha vilog shemen, that you have a mincha. I don't care if it's 1 isaron or 60 isarons, vilog shemen, and just one log of oil. Why are we talking specifically about 60? It's a random number. We are going to discuss this in the few weeks that remain of Masechta Menachos, that 60 is essentially the maximum that could be offered in one bowl. It's come up in Shas in the past, but anyways, Azoi. Now, from Nechem Rabbi Eliezer ben Yankiv, Hai Isaron Balul Vilog my Abdile. What do they, Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, what do they learn out from the rabbis' pasuk where they argue that it's one log per Isaron? Welahu ligufe. Well, that is needed simply to teach us that there is in fact an isaron, that there is in fact a minchas nisachim when it comes to the asham of a mitzora ani. The ka'amr achmana, that the Torah says, laisi chad isarin, bring an isarin with the asham of a ani. I wouldn't have known that otherwise. Let's go weiter. The idach legufe lo tzarich. Whereas the rabbis say, they argue, no. I don't need to teach that the asham of a mitzora ani requires minchas nisachim. How come? Midegali rachmana gabi mitzora ashir gimel korbanis v'gimel esronis. As we discussed earlier, a wealthy mitzora brings 3 korbanis, chatas, ola, and asham, and 3 esronis of flour, and 3 minachos, 3 minchas nisachim. So acha dechad korbin. So do the math. Here, if he's not bringing 3 animals, but 1 animal, so then he won't be bringing 3 isarons, but 1 isaron. I don't need a pasuk to tell me that. Once already, we're saying, right? If by the wealthy mitzvah, he brings 3 animals and 3 isarons. By the poor mitzvah, who's bringing 1 animal, he brings 1 isaron. I don't need a pasuk to tell me that he brings an isaron. I know that. Can use my noggin. So the chad korbin, chad isaron, he's going to bring 1 isaron. I know that. It's not rocket science. V'idach itztrich. But no, Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov push back. Sagadaitech amino, I may have thought that hoyel v'chas achmana ole la'asuye bedalas, since the Torah is making an exception. There's very few such exceptions in the Torah. We have a korban olav yored that we learned about Masechta Shavuos, by Shavuos Bitui, Shavuos Eidus, Tumas Mikdash v'Kodashov. We have korban v'ole olav yored here by a mitzora ani, and there's another example by a yoledes. But that's it. Otherwise, if you have to bring a korban chatas, person mechal Shabbos, you bring an animal. If you bring asham me'ilos, whatever it is. Yeah, you have to bring the korban. You have to bring. But Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say, look, here for whatever reason, the Torah is making an exception for an ani and saying you don't have to bring all the korbanis, just bring the asham. It's reasonable to say that the Torah is saying, you know what, and don't worry about the mincha. Yeah, you have to bring an animal for an asham. I don't know if I said shlam, but an asham. Don't worry about the mincha. That's reasonable to conclude. After all, the Torah is making an exception, right? Lasuye b'dalus, since anyways already the Torah is having rachmanis on this Menorah ani and saying, you know what, you could bring a vastly watered down korbin. So ema lo libay mincha klal. Maybe I shouldn't require a mincha at all. And therefore, they argue that I need that pasuk to say that the Menorah ani does in fact need to bring a mincha. Ve'idach, the rabbis once again push back to their pushback. Legamre lo ashkechon. They say, but still, look, the Ashir brings 3 korbanos, right, 3 animals and 3 isarons of flour. By the ani, the Torah does not completely remove the requirement of animals. And therefore, right, if we have 3 animals, by the Ashir, there's 3 animals and 3 isarons. So by the ani, where we're still holding on to one of the animals, memela, we're also holding on to one of the isarons. That is the argument of the rabbis. Okay, so they say that, therefore, I don't need a pasuk to tell me that the Menorah ani needs an isaron of flour. I would know that already, according to the rabbis. Therefore, they can learn out from isaron balul v'log that each isaron requires a log of oil. 60 isarons, 60 logs of oil. Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say, no, we need that pasuk just to teach us that Menorah ani brings a minchas nisachim. The Rabbanon, hi lemincha v'lo shaman my avdilei. What do the rabbis do with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's pasuk, Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's pasuk, from which they learn that it's 1 log, even for a very large mincha? Avdilei, what they do with that pasuk, zahu limisnade mincha shlo yifchos midavra aton log umayniu isaron. They say, what that means is that they say, right, the mincha v'log shaman is to say that whenever you bring a mincha, you have to bring a minimum amount that would require a log of oil, i.e., an isaron. That you can't bring less than an isaron of flour. You have to bring at least an isaron of flour, which then requires you to bring 1 log of oil. And that is the minimum. You can't do less than that. That's the minimum you have to bring at, right? Lo yifchos, you can't bring less midavar aton log. You can't bring any less than the amount of flour that would require a log of oil, and that umaynu isaron, that is an isaron. Ve'idach taitish mamina shmasmina, and Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, they learn out both things from that pasuk. I don't think that it's an issue of learning 2 things out from the same pasuk. I think it basically goes hand in hand, right? What they're saying is, they learn out from the pasuk of lemincha v'log shemen. It means that you have to bring a mincha that requires a log shemen. You have to, right? Meaning, of course, you have to bring at least an isaron. And because you're bringing an isaron, it requires a log of oil, and that's it. So long as you're bringing an isaron, whether it's 1 isaron, 60 isarons, it doesn't matter. The pasuk, according to them, is simply saying that you have to bring at least an isaron and 1 log of oil. That's it. That's all the pasuk is saying. Regardless if we're talking about 1 isaron or 60 isarons, bring at least 1 isaron and just simply 1 log of oil. That is the machlekes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And in this brisa, we were including Rabbi Nechemia on the side of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that the Chachamim say each, right, 1 log per isaron, and Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say 1 log total. Shisha lapar, arba la'oil, shlosha la'kevis. We said in the Mishnah that there are 6 logs of oil for a cow, 4 for a ram, 3 for a sheep. Minolon. By the way, if anybody was wondering, and I have to imagine that at least one person was wondering, when we say a ram, that there's 4 logs of oil for a ram, it is, if I understand correctly, I think I saw this in the Rambam, that we're specifically talking about a ram. A ram is a 2-year-old male sheep. That's it. Not a 2-year-old female sheep, not a 2-year-old goat, not a 2-year-old goatess. I believe that we are specifically talking about a 2-year-old male sheep. That is a, right, meaning 2-year-old as in its 2nd year. Male sheep. requires 4 loaves of oil. That is the aisle that we're talking about. Any other example of a sheep or a goat would require 3 loaves of oil. That is my understanding. Okay, so for a cow, it's 6 loaves of oil. For a ram, it's 4 loaves of oil. For a sheep, it is 3 loaves of oil. Minolan, how do we know this? Right, what does the pasuk say? V'niskeim chatzi ayin yeh lapar v'shlishis ayin la'ayil v'revi'is ayin lakevis. Right, so it says, v'niskeim chatzi ayin yeh lapar hin tres aluge. And a hin, as we're going to learn out in a second, is 12 logs. And because a hin is 12 logs, we could do the math. Half of that is 6 logs, a third of that is 4 logs, a quarter of that is 3 logs. So tres alog and avian dichsiv, as the pasuk says, shemen zayis hin, that by the shemen hamishcha, when Moses made the shemen, prepared the shemen hamishcha in the wilderness, so the shemen hamishcha required a hin of olive oil, uksiv shemen mishchas kodesh yezeh lilidor seichem, that the shemen, there's the shemen mishcha, the shemen hamishcha is zeh b'gematria tracer havyon, and zeh, 7 is zayin, which is 7. Hey is 5. 7 and 5 is 12. Therefore, therefore, be'etzem, the hin of oil that went into the shemen hamishcha and that is used everywhere is 12 loaves of oil, and half of it is 6, a third of it is 4, and a quarter of it is 3. And now the Gemara discusses how much oil is necessary for the lamps of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. Every single day in the Beis HaMikdash, the menorah would be lit in the afternoon, ben arboim, and it would remain lit the gans nacht, all night. And says the Gemara, Shlosha v'mechza lemenorah chatzi log l'chol ner. The Mishnah had said there's 3.5 logs of oil for the menorah, 1/2 of a log per lamp. How do we know this? The Todah Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, me'erev ad boker. What does the pasuk say? Pasuk Zayin. It says, no. What is the pasuk? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Ba'oil moed michutz laparoches asher al oedus yaruch also ahar nuvonav me'erev ad boker lifnei Hashem chugas. Okay, that the menorah was lit from evening until morning. Tein lo midaso shetedolekes v'oleches me'erev ad boker. Ensure that you have enough oil to last the whole night, from the evening until the morning. Davar acher, alternatively, me'erev ad boker ein la avoda shekshera me'erev ad boker elazo bilvad. There is only one avoda in the Beis HaMikdash. Out of all the avodas in the Beis HaMikdash, there's just one that it's kshera from the evening until the morning. That the mitzvah that it is done dafka at night. Kilu, you have the hektar chalavim ve'varim, as Tosfos points out, you have the hektar chalavim ve'varim, but that really, the mitzvah begins during the day and continues into the night. Sure, there's also the Trumas Hadeshin. Trumas Hadeshin is slightly before Alos HaShachar, but still, that's not the entire night. It's right before Alos HaShachar. The lighting of the candles, however, is the only mitzvah that its mamish begins ben arboim and goes throughout the night until the morning. Right, we learned the other day, if it goes out in the middle of the night, relight it, rekindle it. V'shiaru chachamim, and the chachamim determined that how much oil do you need to last the whole night? Chatzi log me'or tevad safra, half a log from morning until night. Ikadam, those who say milamayla lamata shiaru, v'ika dami mata lamayla shiaru. There are those who say that when determining the sweet spot of how much oil to put in the menorah that will last the whole night. So Rashi gives 2 ways of understanding. I'm going to go with the second way because it's easier for me to understand. That either they started, let's go weiter for a second. Where am I? From down and up. Shiaru. No, what does this mean? It means that how did they determine the sweet spot of how much oil of this chatzi log? That chatzi log is the perfect amount of oil to get through the night. Well, trial and error. So the shaila was, do you start with more and then keep on taking away until you find the perfect amount? Right? That they started with, so that's one opinion. One opinion is that they started with more. They started with a log. And they said, oh, sheesh, we put in a whole log, twice the amount that they landed on, right? They put in a whole log, not a half log. They put a whole log. And sheesh, Imamish burnt the whole day. So they put in a little bit less, 2/3 of a log. And they say, still, too much. They landed on half a log. Half a log was the right amount to burn through the night. It was the right amount to burn through the night. So they started with more, and then they would take, put less and less until they arrived at the right amount. The other option is, of course, to start with less. Start with 1/4 of a log. And we say, no, that didn't quite make it. So I said, let's try 1/3 of a log. Still didn't quite make it. Half a log, perfect. And what would be the rationale for starting with more or less? Well, the rationale for starting with more and taking away is because Einan used b'makom hashirus, right? We're talking about the Beis Hamikdash or the Mishkan, right? We're a place of grandeur, right? It's the Beis Hamikdash, the home of the Rabbeinu Shalom. We don't want to be stingy. So better to start with more and we'll take away rather than to start with a little bit and okay, we'll add a little bit. No, let's be generous. The other option though is that we're talking about public funds over here. And therefore, start with less, and as we need to, we'll add more so that we're not wasting any money. Because after all, if you put in too much oil, what do you do with the extra? You spill it out. So better to start with less, because Tosfos says something very interesting, quoting the Yerushalmi, that in the summer, when the nights were shorter, they would put in a thicker wick, right? Because you'd have the same amount of oil throughout the whole year. There is, of course, also a shita, which is not in this Gemara over here, that the point of the half a log was that it was enough. Again, this isn't an hour Gemara, but it was enough to be able to last through the long nights of the winter, right? So in the summer you'd have extra oil. In the summer you'd have extra oil, and in the winter it was enough to make it through the whole night. The Yerushalmi, however, says that actually they would use different thicknesses of wicks throughout the year, corresponding with how long the night is. So in the summer, when the night is shorter, so there would be thicker wicks that would suck up more, that would slurp up more oil, and they would use more oil. In the winter, when it was a longer night, so they would use thinner wicks that would burn the oil slower. And I guess kind of in the spring, kind of in between, they would use like kind of Benoni wicks, which is, I thought, a pretty interesting detail there. And now we get up to the next Mishnah where we discuss mixing together korbanis and the mizbeach. This is exciting. Whenever it comes to mixing things up, that's always an exciting topic. Mixtures. That's like I feel like that's one of the more challenging topics in Shas. Mixtures, ta'arovos. Not the easiest. Ma'arvin nischei parim benischei elim nischei kvasim benischei kvasim. So, the minchas nisachim of a cow, right? For a cow, it's 3 isarons of flour, 6 isarons of oil. That's a ratio of 2-1. For a ram, it's 2 isarons of flour, 4 low. What did I say about the cow? The cow is 3 isarons of flour, 6 logs of oil. The ram is 2 isarons of flour, 4 logs of oil. Both the cow and the ram are a ratio of 2-1, 6-3, 4-2. Sheep, however, are a different ratio. 1 isaron of flour, 3 logs of oil. That's a ratio of 3-1. So cows and rams have a ratio of 2-1, logs of oil to isarons of flour, and that's cows and rams. Sheep have a ratio of 3-1, logs of oil to isarons of flour. Now, what the Mishnah is saying is that me'arvin, it's going to be all shaila, but is that we're saying the chatchila b'diavad, what are we actually talking about? Me'arvin nischei parim b'nischei elim, that we can mix together the nisachim of cows and rams because they have the same ratio. So just whether you're talking, let's say a cow and a ram, you mix them together. So we're talking about a total of 5 5 isarons of flour, so it's a ratio of 2-1, so get 10 loaves of oil, and you have enough for what you need. Right? The cow requires 6 loaves of oil, the ram requires 4 loaves of oil. At the end of the day, it's the same ratio, so all good. And also, nisrei kvasim b'nisrei kvasim. And also, if you have multiple sheep, and the sheep also have the same 1 isaron of flour, 3 loaves of oil, if they get all mixed together, it's fine because it's the same ratios, just however much flour you have, 3 isarons, 3 loaves of oil per isaron of flour. Shel yochid b'shel tzibor, the same thing. If you have, let's say, an olas yochid and an olas tzibor, it's going to be the same ratios. So also, if they get mixed together, it's fine. Shel yom b'shel emesh, also, let's say, right? So you can offer the nesachim even the next day, or they say, right, alacher es asar yom, even 10 days later, whatever. So let's say there was let's say the korbin Talmud from yesterday. You didn't offer the nesachim, so I guess you can offer them today. So you didn't offer the nesachim of yesterday's korbin Talmud, and you offer them today with the nesachim of today's korbin Talmud, and they get mixed together. It's the same nesachim, so it's fine. Aval, however, ein me'arvin nisrei kvasim b'nisrei parim ve'elim. But you can't mix together the minchas nesachim of sheep with their ratio of 3-1 together with a cow or a ram which have a ratio of 2-1. That's going to be a problem. Because if you mix them together, then it's going to dilute the ratio of the sheep and it's going to increase the ratio of the rams or cows. That is going to be a problem. That's a problem. But now we say, but wait a second, even if they do, however, get mixed together, the imbalulon elu b'fnei atzman ve'elu b'fnei atzman v'nisarvu ksherim. But if you had, let's say, a ram, and there's the minchas nesachim of 2 isarons and 4 loaves, and you mix that all together. You took 2 isarons of flour, 4 loaves of oil, you mixed them all up. And now you had the minchas nesachim of a sheep, which is 1 isaron of flour, 3 loaves of oil, and you already mixed that up. So you already did you did the mitzvah of mixing together and preparing the mincha of the ram, and you already prepared the mincha of the sheep, and then they got mixed up together. It's kosher. Im ad shelo balal posel. But if they got mixed together before the oil was mixed in, well, then when you mix in the oil, the ratios are going to be off, and that's going to be posel. Hakeves haba ima omer. Now, state in pasuk, the pasuk says in Parshas Emer that along with the minchas haomer on the second day of Pesach was brought 2 isarons of flour. Normally with a keves, normally with the sheep, of course, there would be 1 isaron of flour, 3 loaves of oil. There was an exception when it came to the keves that was offered with the minchas haomer. There were 2 isarons of flour with that sheep. Hakeves habayim haomer apal pi sheminchaso kfula. Even though the flour is doubled, there are 2 isarons. Lo ayu nisachav kfulim. The nisachim were not doubled, i.e., the oil was still 3 loaves of oil, not 6. The wine was 3 loaves of wine, not 6. Okay, you drink a stick of water and we'll jump into the Gemara. Now says the Gemara, the Mishnah had said, what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said, Ma'arvin nisrei parim ben nisrei elim. Go ahead, lichatchila, mix together the nisachim, the minchas nisachim of cows and sheep and rams. After all, right, cows and rams, after all, they have the same ratio. 2 loaves oil for every 1 isaron of flour. But viru aminu, however, we have a contradiction that a braisa says viktiroi, that this pasuk is talking about a korban. Shlomo says viktiro, you will burn it. Shelo yi'arev chalavim bechalavim. Don't mix together korbanis. Don't mix together korbanis. Don't do it. don't mix together emurim, don't mix together minchas nisachim. Viktiro, anything that's going to be burnt on the mizbeach, burn separately. Right, I looked at, there's some Rambams here. I looked up some Rambams, for example, by the korbin Pesach, right? And on Erev Pesach, there's 1,000,000 korbin Pesachs being offered. Let's just take all the emurim and just burn them all together. No, the emurim for each korbin Pesach is burnt on its own. So you're also, each korbin is burnt separately. You don't mix and therefore the flour which is being burnt on the mizbeach, right? The minchas nesachim is burnt entirely on the mizbeach. Burn it individually. Mazeh me'arvin nisrei parim b'nisrei elim. We mix them together. No, we don't. The nisrei parim have to be burnt on the mizbeach themselves, and the nisrei elim need to be burnt on the mizbeach themselves. Ma pitom. Vektiroi shelo yarev chalovim b'chalovim. Do not mix together the fats and say, let's just burn them all together. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, im nisarvu ka'omar. Rabbi Yochanan suggests that, well, the Mishnah is talking about b'di'evet. If the nesachim of a cow got mixed zusammen with the nesachim of a ram, okay, nish geferlich, it's okay. It's okay, you can burn them. But don't do it lechatchila. We're talking about b'di'evet, it's okay, it's kosher, that's it. But if that's the case, when we then talk about what if they did get mixed together, right? What if, right? We say, so if we're saying b'di'evet, if we're saying, okay, b'di'evet, if the minchas nesachim of a cow and a ram get mixed together, it's okay. But then we say, if the minchas nesachim of a cow and a sheep get mixed together, we said it's not okay, right? What do we say? Aval ein me'arvin, I'm reading from the Mishnah, nisrei kvasim b'nisrei parim ve'elim. But don't mix together the minchas nesachim of a cow and a sheep. Well, that implies even b'di'evet. Is that what we're saying? So we're saying b'di'evet. Okay, we're saying lichatchila, the minchas nesachim of the cow and of the ram need to be offered separately. Lichatchila, if they get mixed together b'di'evet, you can offer them together. But that would mean that then when it comes to the cow and the sheep, however, even b'di'evet, it's possible. So it says the Gemara, if that's the case, vein ma'arvin nisrei kvasim b'nisrei parim ve'elim, and we don't mix zusammen together the minchas nesachim of sheep and cows or rams, va'afilu nisarvu nami lo. Would that mean that therefore even b'di'evet it is possible? But midikatani seifa, what does it say immediately after that in the Mishnah? And if they did get mixed together, so long as they were mixed individually, ksherin. So we see that it's that even b'di'evet it could be kosher. Michlal dereisha lichatchila ka'amar, which means that before that, right, we're saying lichatchila, meaning when it says, right, when the Mishnah says, aval ein ma'arvin nisrei kvasim b'nisrei parim ve'elim, we're saying don't mix together the minchas nesachim of sheep with cows or rams, ve'im balalan, and if they do, b'di'evet, it could be kosher or whatever, if they were mixed separately. So meaning that means that we're talking about ve'im balalan, if that happens b'di'evet, it means that up until then we're talking about lichatchila. And therefore, if we're saying that, okay, lichatchila don't mix together sheep and cows, so then that also means that the previous thing that it said in the Mishnah is also lichatchila, that when it says me'arvin, it means lichatchila me'arvin nisrei parim b'nisrei elim. But again, Yachi, ve'ein me'arvin nisrei kvasim b'nisrei parim ve'elim afilu nisarvu nami lo. Right? If we're talking about b'di'evet, then that would mean that sheep together with cows or rams would be also even b'di'evet. But we see, it says right after that not necessarily. Balalan, if they did, however, get mixed together, elu b'fnei atzman ve'elu b'fnei atzman, and you mixed the minchas nesachim of the sheep separately and of the cows or rams separately, v'nisarvu, and then afterwards they got mixed together, ksherin. it's nonetheless kosher. So that talks about what happens if they did, which means that michlad dereisha lechatchila ka'amar, which means that up until then we're not talking about b'di'ever, we're talking about lechatchila. Which means that when the Mishnah says that we can mix together the minchas nisachim of cows and rams, because they're both the same ratio of 2-1, that's lechatchila. The problem with that is that we saw that the Brisa says viktiro shelo yerav chalav mechalav. That when the pasuk says viktiro, you will burn it individually. It means that we don't mix together the different fats, but also the different minchas nesachim, anything that's burnt on the mizbeach. Yet our Mishnah seems to be saying in lechatchila, as long as it's the same ratio, it's fine. So Amar Abaye, comes Abaye and he says, Hachi ka'amar, this is how you have to understand the Mishnah. Me'arvin, when the Mishnah says me'arvin, we can mix together. Me'arvin yenon, you can mix together wine. Wine is not burnt on the mizbeach; it's poured down the sfolim in the mizbeach. There are bowls at the side of at the southwestern corner of the mizbeach. You pour the wine down there. You don't burn it. So when it says viktiro, that's talking about things that you burn, fats, minchas nisachim. The nisach hayayin is not burnt; it's poured. And says Abaye Yochikamer, when the Mishnah is talking about me'arvin, it means yenon. You can mix together the wine of the cows and of the rams. Im nisarev sultan v'shamnon. That in the event that b'di'eved their flour and their oil got mixed together, right? So we're saying viktiro means that you have to burn them separately. You have to burn the minchas nesachim of the cow and of the ram separately, even though they have the same ratio. What if they did get mixed together? Okay, well in that case, they already got mixed together. And since they're already mixed together, so then, lichatchila, you can now at this point you can mix together the wines at this point as well. V'yayin lichatchila lo, but 1 second, you're telling me that only if the minchas nesachim got mixed together, the mincha of the cow and the ram got mixed together, only then you could mix the wines together? The 3 loaves of wine and the 6 loaves of wine respectively? No, so the 4 loaves of wine and the 6 loaves of wine respectively for the ram and for the cow? You can only mix those together in the event that their minchas nesachim got mixed together? But Vatani, we learned in the Tosefta, it's talking in the Tosefta, it's talking there about if a sheep gets mixed together, if the minchas nesachim of a sheep gets mixed together with that of a cow or a ram, so we say, when is it as a problem? Bisoles, vishemen, when we're talking about their flour and their oil, because they're different ratios. Aval yayin, but if we're talking about their wines, the 3 loaves of wine for the sheep and the 4 or 6 loaves of wine for the ram or cow, me'arvin those, lichatchila, we can mix together. So Tosefta says that you can simply mix together the wines. Why is Abaye saying you can only mix together the wines in the event that the flours got mixed together, that the minchas nesachim got mixed together? The Tosefta says you can mix together the wines regardless. Elo Amar Abaye, rather Abaye tweaks his answer. This is what's going on. Heicha de hukter sultan vishamnon. Look, in the event where the soles, right, the minchas nesachim was already burnt on the mizbeach and it's done. There's no more minchas nesachim, was already burnt on the mizbeach. The mincha of the cow, of the ram, whether they got mixed together, whether they didn't get mixed together, they're already burnt on the mizbeach, they're already done. At that case, even the chatchila, in that case, and that's what our Mishnah is talking about, even the chatchila, you can mix together the wines and burn them on the mizbeach, since the minchas nesachim has already been burnt. Now, if the minchas nesachim has not yet been burnt on the mizbeach, im nisarev sultan vishamnon, so if the flour and the oil of the cow and the ram already got mixed together, you shouldn't be mixing them together, because viktiro, you have to offer them separately. You have to burn them separately. If they did get mixed together, okay, in that case already, ma'arvin nami yayin, you could at that point mix together their wine. V'imlav, and if it's sorry, just to back up 1 second. So when our Mishnah talks about mixing together the wine lichatchila, but certainly when the Tosefta talks about mixing together the wine lichatchila, that is once they have already been burnt. Okay. Now, if they haven't yet been burnt, right? So we said if they already got mixed together, so then ma'arvin nami lichatchila. Where am I? Fine. If they haven't yet mixed together, ein me'arvin. If the minchas nesachim have not yet been mixed together, don't mix together the wine then. Dilma asa li'aruve soles v'shemen lechatchila, because lest you might come to mix together the minchas nesachim, and we don't want you to do that. Okay, so what just happened? It's a little bit tricky. It's certainly a little bit tricky. So what happened is, the Tosefta, we have a few things going on. On the one hand, we have a brisa that says, viktiro, that you need to be burning everything separately. The emurim separately, the chalavim separately, the minchas nisachim separately. Even when you have multiple sheep, you should be burning the minchas nisachim separately. Now, if you have, let's say, when the Tosefta, okay, and we have a Tosefta that says that you could be mixing together the different wines, even milchatchila. And yet Abaye is saying that no, it's only b'diavad that you can mix together the wines. So what are we saying? So we're saying, look, in the event, right? So you have, let's say, the minchas nesachim of a cow and of a ram, and they get mixed together, and it's the same ratios, and it's fine. You shouldn't do it lichatchila, but they got mixed together. And you already burnt them on the mizbeach, so it's already history. There's nothing to be concerned about at this point. Okay, you can mix together the wines, even milichatchila, and pour them on the mizbeach. That's fine. Now, if they haven't yet been burnt on the mizbeach, so we said, look, in the event that they have already been mixed together, right? The minchas nesachim of the cow and of the ram, they already got mixed together. Okay, so if they're already mixed together, you can mix together the wine as well. But if they haven't yet been mixed together, don't mix together the wines, because at that point we really just want to be keeping things separate. Yes, technically mixing together the wines isn't a big deal, but if you mix together the wines, you might mix together the minchas nesachim. We don't want you to do that. So therefore, in the event that we want to be keeping all the minchas nesachim separately, and so long as they still are separate and have not been mixed together, so then don't mix together the wines either. In the event that the minchas nesachim have gotten mixed together, then you can mix together the wine. And certainly if the minchas nesachim has been burnt already, regardless of if they got mixed together before they were burnt, or regardless of if they were burnt separately, either way, if they've already been burnt, there's nothing to worry about. So then you can mix together the wines as well. That was a bit of a tricky sugya there. Keves Abayim Omer, we had mentioned at the end of the Mishnah, the sheep that accompanies the minchas Omer, Tanu Rabbanan the rabbis taught, uminchaso shnei esronim, that the minchas nisachim of the sheep that accompanies the minchas Omer, the minchas nesachim of that sheep is unique. Normally it's 1 isaron, here it's 2 esronim. Limit al keves haboim Omer, it teaches that the sheep that accompanies the minchas Omer sheminchaso, that its minchas nesachim kfula, the flour at least, is doubled. Instead of 1 isaron, it's 2 isarons. Now, yachol kshem sheminchaso kfula kach yeno kfula, yeno kaful. Is it possible that, well, just like we double the flour, we'll double the wine? Instead of 3 loaves of wine, it'll be 6 loaves of wine? Talmud lomar v'nisko yayin revi'asayin. That very same pasuk. Right, the pasuk about the sheep says, "Uminchaso shnei esronim." I'm reading the pasuk. Soles blula b'shaman isha l'shem reich nichoach l'shem v'nisko yayin revi'asayin. A quarter of a hin. 12 divided by 4 is 3. It's the same 3 loaves of wine. Yachol lo yeh yeno kaful she'eno nivlol im minchaso. Okay, but maybe, so the wine stays the same. It's still the same 3 logs of wine. But that's because the wine isn't being mixed with the flour like the oil is. But yehi shamno kaful shenivlo minchaso. But maybe the oil should be doubled because it's mixed with the flour. Right? For 1 isaron of flour, you would mix it with 3 logs of oil. But maybe now that you're doubling the flour, right? So you're doubling the recipe, so to speak, right? It's twice as much flour, 2 isarons. So maybe we need now twice as much oil to mix it with, 6 logs of oil. Tamlomer vinisko. Therefore, it says vinisko. We're going to explain what this means in a second. Kol nechasav lo yuel revius. All of the liquid amounts are going to be 3 logs. 3 logs of oil, 3 logs of wine. My Talmud, how does that learn that from Nisko? Well, Amr Rabbi Lazar says, Rabbi Lazar, if you look at how the pasuk is written, Ksiv v'nisko, v'karinan v'nisko. It's written with a hey. It's one of those examples where v'nisko is written with a hey. So it's written with a hey, but pronounced as though it was written with a vav. Okay, it's not, what does this mean? Niska de mincha, when it's the hey is representing the fact that we're talking about the mincha. So the liquid that's being mixed with the mincha, the oil. Kinisko diayin is like the wine. Mayayin revius, avshemanam revius, just like the wine. We're talking about a revius alog. We're talking about with a revius ayin 3 logs. So also the oil, we're talking about 3 logs. And finally, now to wrap up Daf Peites of Masechta Menachos, when a korbin is offered shelo lishma, very interesting sugya. We've been talking about korbanis shelo lishma for the past, how many months? For, I don't know, probably like 6-7 months. We've been talking about korbanis shelo lishma. So when you offer, when you have, let's say, slaughter a korbin shelo lishma, we say it's kosher. But what about all the rest of the details? What about the nesachim? Do you do it like the original korbin, or like the one that you intended, that you slaughtered it as? Right? As I gave an example earlier, a person needs to bring a korban chatas. He says, I'll bring a korban chatas. I'll also bring a korban shlomim at the same time. He slaughters the korban shlomim as though it was the chatas. So he slaughters the korban as a chatas. So does he just from now say, okay, let's just offer it as the chatas now? Or do we say that no, even though you intended it as a chatas, but this really is the animal set aside as a shlomim, so you're going to do all the shlomim stuff. There's going to be nisachim and there's probably tenufa as well, etc. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, Asham Mitzorah. So if you have the Asham Mitzorah, Asham Mitzorah requires nisachim. Sheshachato shaloi lishmoi, and it was slaughtered shaloi lishma, maybe as in Asham Me'ilos or something. Taun nisachim, says Rabbi Yochanan, it requires the nisachim. You're gonna have to offer the minchas nisachim, the yisaron. Okay. She'im i'ata omer kain psalto. Because if you don't offer the minchas nisachim, the korban is possible, right? Because as we know from the first Mishnah Masechta Zvachim, that if a korban is slaughtered shelo lishma, it's still kosher, but you still have to do all the other details. And if a Asher Mitzorah requires nisachim, so if you don't offer the nisachim, it's possible you have to offer the nisachim. Maskiv Rav Menashe bar Gora. Rav Menashe bar Gora, however, asks the question. He says, Ela me'ata, keves abay ma'omer. The sheep. What about the sheep that comes with the omer? That's unique. Sheshachado shelo lishma. If you slaughter that as, let's say, a regular korban ola, temin chaso kfula, are you still going to have to offer the double mincha? Shemiyata omer kain psato. Because if you don't offer the double minchas nisachim would be possible. The Talmud shachar. Also, Talmud shachar sheshachado shelo lishmo. What if you slaughter the Talmud shachar shelo lishmo? Yeton shnei gezirin b'kain echad. right? As part of setting up the ma'aracha for the korban tamid shel shachar, these two special pieces of wood were added to the ma'aracha, to the pyre, and that was set up by one kohen. So, she'im i'ata omer ked psalto, then the korban is going to be possible otherwise without them. V'tamid shel ben arbaim, also the afternoon offering, sheshachado shelo lishma. Lishma, if it was offered shelo lishma yeton shnei gezirin b'shnei kohanim, also it should require these two pieces of wood. This time put there by two kohanim. Shemi ato omer ken, if you don't say it's pasalto. Eno chinami el omer abai chadim min ayunakon. So Rabbi Yochanan says that when it comes to the Asher Mitzorah, if it's slaughtered shelo lishma, you still have to do the nisachim. So Rabbi Menashe bar Gada, he says, so what? But then what about what the sheep that accompanies the omer? If you do shelo lishma, what? You have to do the 2 isarons of flour, and the tamid shel shachar, tamid shel ben arbaim. If it was shelo lishma, you still have to have the shnei gzirei eitzim set up properly. So Abai says, yeah, ena chinami. Rabbi Yochanan was just using one example, the example of the Asher Mitzorah, but ena chinami, yeah, the same would apply to the keves abai ma'omer and the korban tamid. Rava Omer says Rabbi exchanges to Rava. Rava Omer, Rashi's gear says Rava. Bishlama hanoch olis nenu. He says no. Rava says that they're actually different, because when it comes to the sheep that comes with the minchas Omer, as well as the korban tamid shel shachar or korban tamid shel ben arbaim, these are olas, and an ola you could bring as a nedavah. Anybody could bring a korban ola, and a person who brings a korban ola as a nedavah brings one korban, well, assuming that it's a sheep, which is what the korban tamid is, and which is what the keves of the omer is. So if it was being offered as a sheep, so it would be just one isaron of flour. So because an ola, because there's other examples are olas by the omer, by the korban tamid shel shachar, shel ben arbaim, these are olas, and olas could be offered as an nedavah, and if it was offered as an nedavah, it would just be one isaron. So you offer with one isaron. Ilo chazu laolas chavu amai. So hanach olas nenu. Ilo chazu laolas chova karvi laolas nedavah. Now, if they can't be offered as olas chova because it was shelo lishma, so just simply offer it as an olas nedavah and offer one isaron of flour. Elahachab, when it comes to the ashram is unique because you can't just bring an ashram nedavah. There's no, okay, I'll just bring a regular ashram. There's no regular ashram that you could just offer without cause. Therefore, you have to be bringing the ashram mitzorah. There's no other option. And therefore, you have to bring its nisachim. So, la'acha, ilo mukmeis le b'milsei, ashram nedavah mi'ika, if you're not just going to establish it with its own details, with its own implementation, with bringing the nisachim that are required for a kosher ashram mitzorah, well, this is also a kosher one, just it won't count for the owner. As we're going to see in a second, he has to bring another one. But since there's no other option to bring it voluntarily, so therefore you got to stick with all of its details, including the nisachim. So Tani Kavasi to Rabbi Yochanan, we have a brayso supporting Rabbi Yochanan Asher Mitzorah sheshachad shelo lishma. If you have the Asher Mitzorah that was slaughtered shelo lishma, shelo nosan midama al gabi bahonis, or the blood was not placed on the Mitzorah's bahonis. Harezo ola legabi mizbeach, you could still sacrifice it. You're still going to offer it on the mizbeach v'ton nisachim, and it requires nisachim. But you're still going to require another korban asham to be able to become mutter to come into the congregation, because shelo alu levadim shem chova didn't actually count for him. He's going to have to bring a new asham mitzvah, but you can still offer this one, and you would offer the nisachim as well. Friends, that was the pei tes of Masechta Menachos. Sheesh, as I suspected, that was a big one. The first section of today's daf was the korbin Todah's oil. It is a half a log. That half a log of oil is for the 3 chametz, the 3 matzah loaves. Rabbi Kiva said that it is 1/4 for one, right? So you have a half a log that's divided further in half to 2 quarter logs. 1/4 log is for the chalos and rikikin, and 1/4 is just for the revuchin. Now, and he learns that out from all these different riboys and miut. Reb Elazar ben Azariah learns it out from Alachal Moshe Misinai, and he says that it is a half a log of oil divided equally among the chalas, rikikin, and revuchin, 1/6 of a log for each of them. Now, we discussed how much oil accompanies a minchas nedavah. The rabbis say 1 log of oil per isaron of flour, but Rabbi Yaakov says 1 log of oil, period, even for 60 isarons of flour. And we discussed where exactly they learn out their respective opinions from. We discussed the amount of oil for lighting the menorah. It is half a log per lamp, times 7 is a total of 3.5 logs. And Tosfos says, well, the reason for half a log per lamp is that way it would burn through the night. We also discussed, did they start with more and go with less, or start with less and more? Tosfos says that actually throughout the year, there would be a thinner wick in the winter when the nights were longer and the oil needed to last longer, and a thicker wick in the summer when the nights were shorter and they could, burn through the oil at a higher rate, and they would have kind of in the middle, let's say during the spring, where there were like mid-sized nights. We discussed mixing together korbanis on the mizbeach. This is a bit of a tricky sugya. First of all, avoid it. Avoid mixing together the chalavim. Avoid mixing together the minchas nisachim. Avoid it. Now, korbanos with the same nisachim ratios are okay b'diavad. If they got, if the minchas nisachim of a cow and of an aisle, or 2 cows, or 2 aisles, or 2 kevises got mixed together, b'diavad, it's okay. Lechatchila, v'ktiro, you should be burning each one separately. Now, korbanos with different ratios are okay if they're mixed separately, right? So if you have the minchas nisachim of a cow, that the flour and oil was mixed on its own, and then you have a sheep and its flour and oil was mixed on its own, and then it got mixed together after they already did all the mixing that they needed to do, it could be okay. But if mixed together, all the flour got mixed together, and then you put all the oil together, well, then the ratios are going to be the ratio of the kevis is going to be diluted and too much for the cow, so then it's going to be possible. Now the wine could be mixed even lechatchila if the flour has already been burned. If the flour has already been burned and that's taken care of, so then you could even mix lechatchila the wines. However, if not burned yet, so then we said in that case, if the minchas nisachim has not yet been burned, if they got mixed up already, let's say the cow and the ram got mixed up already, so then you can mix together the wine. If they haven't been mixed up, then don't mix together the wine, because we want to avoid mixing together the wine, which could lead to mixing together the flours. And finally, when a korbin is offered shelo lishma, very, very interesting question. So Abaye says all the details of the original korbin are preserved, whereas Rava says the basic details of the original korbin are preserved, which means that, for example, by a korbin ola, so for example, the ola that accompanies the minchas ha'omer, which is unique in that it has 2 isarons of flour, we can just treat it as a minchas, as an olas nedavah, which would only have 1 isaron of flour, and that's enough. But for example, by the asham mitzorah that's offered shelo lishma, well, there isn't really any other korbin it could be offered as, and you're just gonna have to offer it with its details and with its nisachin. Friends, that was the very, very long and big daf of Peites of Masechta Menachos. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great Shabbos. Cheers.